everybody. So here we are with the final lecture of the semester. It's going to be on the chapter on stress and health. So, as we always do, we're not going to go over every single thing in the chapter. We're just going to go over some of the main highlights that are pertaining to your discussion forum. So, the main subfield of psychology that focuses on stress and health is going to be health psychology. So, health psychologists work on every single connection you could think of between the mind and the body. And one of the things that they're interested in is stress and how stress affects the body, how different types of stressors exist, and what we can do to manage those stressors when they do come into our life. So there's different types of stressors. One type of stressor is known as a chronic stressor. A chronic stressor is something that is ongoing. So we all have, stressful events that happen. Somebody cuts you off when you're driving to work. Somebody gets your order wrong when you're ordering food at a drive-through. When you're in class, you have an assignment that is looming over your head. So we all deal with stressors at every point in our life, but sometimes we have stressors that are ongoing and chronic. It's when those stressors come that they can start to have a debilitating effect on our life, depending on how we react to it, depending on how we look at it, and depending on a number of other factors that we're going to cover as we go over the course of this chapter. One of the major things that will play a role in terms of how much a chronic stressor will affect you and the negative impact that it can have on your life is your perceived level of control over that stressor. So if it's something that you feel like you can handle, or if it's something that you feel like you can pretty much get through, then you're going to have a much better reaction to it and be much more likely to seek social support, much more likely to get through that issue. But on the flip side, if you feel like you have no control over this, there's no way out, you're trapped, then that's when the stressor is going to start to have more of a negative effect on your life. So we're going to talk about some effects of chronic stressors over our life, and some of the things that happen in our body as well as our mind, and then we're going to go into coping mechanisms for stressors. So first of all, what happens in our body? So one of the first things that happens in our body is there are multiple systems at work when we are under stress. So the first one that gets activated is something known as the fight or flight response. So this is a combination of your nervous system and your endocrine system. So on the nervous system side, you're having your autonomic nervous system that kicks into gear to let you know, okay, we're under stress, we're ready to fight, we're ready for action, something's going on. So you'll start to get activated on the inside automatically. You'll start sweating, your pupils will dilate, all these things, your brain will be activated, you'll start to tighten up, so to speak, because you're ready for action. On the endocrine side, there are several glands that are at work when you are dealing with a stressful reaction. For instance, your adrenal gland, it releases certain hormones that help you to be more alert and more active, and take in more of your surroundings to help you combat whatever the stressor is. There was a researcher named Hans Salier who tried to break down like the process of stress and what happens when a person is under prolonged periods of stress. The name of his theory was general adaptation syndrome, and what he believed is that you go through three different phases under prolonged or chronic stress. So the first one is something known as the alarm phase, and that is exactly what we just saw on the last slide, which is the fight or flight response. So the alarm phase is you having that fight or flight response. You're like, okay, there's a situation happening, what am I going to do, basically. The resistance phase only kicks into gear after you have been under that stressor for a long period of time. So like, let's say it just passes it almost as soon as it happens, you only stay in the alarm phase and then it's over. But if that stress continues, like for instance, let's say that you get into a car accident, now you don't have a car. Okay, that sucks. But okay, if you're easily able to get a rental directly after that and you're able to drive, and there's no like serious injuries or anything, then you'll probably have just been in the alarm phase, and then you just wait for your new car and you're not really stressed out anymore. But let's say that there's an issue with your insurance company and they're not trying to cover it, and then you got to pay you didn't have gap insurance, so now you have to pay for the old car before you could pay for the new car, and then there's all these extra things going on. That's when you might enter into what's known as the resistance phase, where your body is still trying to combat that stress, but it's really not designed to combat long periods of stress. So is starting to be under strain, essentially, which is why it's called the resistance phase. And then let's say that it goes way too far. Let's say that your insurance company drops you. They refuse to pay out the claim. You don't have any options for a rental anymore. Now you done lost your job. Now there's all the other things happening. And it starts to have this compounding effect on your life. That's when you might enter into what's known as the exhaustion phase. And the exhaustion phase is when your body starts to actually visibly have reactions to the stress. So for example, you might have panic attacks. For you might develop some kind of neurological disorder. You might develop some kind of bodily disorder. You might get sick, or you might get sicker if you were already sick. So the exhaustion phase is your body starting to kind of break down as a response to prolonged stress. So the alarm phase is just for short periods of stress, something that happens and it's over as quickly as it starts. Resistance is when your body is still trying to hold on for as long as it can, and then exhaustion is when your body's like, all right, I'm through. So, what are some of the other things that can happen in your body when you're dealing with stress? So one of them is something called our telomeres. So there are telomeres that are located at the end of every single one of our chromosomes. And what they are is they help to strengthen the vitality and the nutrients of the cell. And these telomeres, they become shorter over time, essentially. So as the cell continues to multiply and divide throughout time in your life, the telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter. But prolonged and chronic stress, they can actually cause those telomeres to actually shorten at a much more exponential rate. So that's situations where you can see a person over a period of time and they seem like they've aged, or they seem like it's a night and day difference between them this year and them last year. That's because those telomeres, if they start to shorten at a more rapid pace, then that can start to cause the person to lose their sense of vitality, lose their youthfulness. Their body will start to literally age quicker than it's supposed to. Um, so one brief note, we just heard about some of the negative effects that can happen if your telomeres start to shorten too much prematurely. Are the things that you can do to actually lengthen and strengthen them? There is some research that has shown that there are certain things that you could do to help preserve your telomeres or keep them around as long as possible, or even lengthen them. Some of those things are eating a healthy diet. So having a diet with antioxidants, leafy greens, also getting exercise. They say a moderate level of exercise, at least 3 to 5 times a week, that can help to strengthen your telomeres, lengthen your telomeres, stimulating your mind, abstaining from excessive use of drugs and alcohol and things like that, risky behaviors. All those things working together can help to strengthen and lengthen those telomeres, and keep them around as long as possible. All right. So what other things can happen under chronic stress, or what other things can be impacted by chronic stress? So one of the things is your socioeconomic status. But what's interesting about socioeconomic status is it's not just the status itself. So the status itself can lead to a source of stress, but it's more so your perception of yourself while under the status. So if you perceive yourself as of lower status and perceive yourself as lacking in resources, perceive yourself as lacking in opportunities, that is going to lead to way more stress than if you just being in that position in the first place. So if you're in a position but you don't necessarily perceive yourself as lower class, etc., then the stress is not going to be as strong as it would be as a person who feels like there's no way out. It feels like there's no resources, no opportunities for them. Another negative effect of stress can be discrimination or racism. If there's chronic ongoing microaggressions and things that you're experiencing over time, that can compound and lead to negative effects of stress in your life, and as well as on your body as well. All right. So what other things happen in your body? What other things are happening when you're stressed out? Your heart can start to have issues. So stress starts to put too much weight on your heart, essentially, and all your systems in your body, not just your heart. But it can lead to heart disease. It can lead to strokes. It can lead to high blood pressure. It can lead to a bunch of different cardiovascular issues, because the stress is ongoing and it's not being addressed and there's nothing being done about it, essentially. Also, stress will lead to other behaviors, typically, that will also have a negative effect on your heart. Like, for instance, if somebody's stressed out, a lot of times they will engage in, like, drugs and alcohol. So they might smoke, they might drink, they might do other things like that, and they might do it in an excessive way. And if they do it in an excessive way, what can end up happening is, because they're doing it excessively, it can end up starting to have an issue on their heart, and et cetera, et cetera. Also, stress can lead to a sedentary lifestyle because the person is exhausted all the time. They're tired all the time. So that can lead to wear and tear on your heart. It can also lead to a poor diet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the list goes on and on, to all the effects that can lead to heart issues because of lifestyle factors that are associated with stress or with high stress. All right. So what else is going on your mind? So there are also stressors that can. There are also factors that are associated with your mind that can have an effect on how you respond to stress. So we just talked about some of the heart stuff and some of the lifestyle factors, but your mindset will play a very strong role in how you perceive stress, how you receive stress, and how you adapt to stress. So a lot of it is how you interpret the situation. So going back to what we said before, if you interpret the situation as I have no control over this, there's no way out, I can't get out of this, there's nothing I can do, then you're just going to start to have more of those negative effects. But on the flip side, if you see it as, okay, I don't see this as threatening, I see this as a challenge, I see this as something I can get through, then that's going to help you cope with the situation better, and then help you get out of it quicker, and then help you actually fare better overall with the situation, even if it is a chronic stressor. One of the negative effects on the flip side, let's say that the person is not perceiving this in a positive way, let's say that they're not handling it in a way that they see it as a challenge rather than a threat, it can lead to a state of burnout. And burnout is simply the exhaustion phase that we talked about earlier when we said that it was the alarm phase, the resistance phase, and then the exhaustion phase. So burnout is the equivalent of that exhaustion phase, where we just feel like we have done all that we could do, we don't feel like we want to do anymore, we are completely done, we're just burnt out. It can lead to a sense of apathy, sarcasm, irritation, anger, and the list goes on and on and on. And it usually will happen in the workplace. It can happen in other places as well, but it's usually associated with the workplace, where the person feels like they have no autonomy on their job. They feel like they have no control over their circumstances, and they feel like they're not making enough money. They're overworked, underpaid. They're not being heard. All those things come together to make a person feel like they're just burnt out. So what are some ways to help combat a person feeling burnt out? Number one, trying to alleviate some of the burden. So for example, let's say that they're in a position, but they're having too many responsibilities in that position. Trying to delegate some of those responsibilities, or finding another position that might open up to take the brunt of some of those responsibilities, so that's more shared. Also giving a person a choice to feel like they have some level of control over their job, so it's not like they're being told what to do every single day. It might be like, okay, so what's your idea in this situation? So things like that can help a person regain a sense of control and make it feel like they don't have no choice anymore, essentially, at their job. So other things, now the chapter is going to shift into like how to manage stress and healthy ways to manage stress, what we can do to have some of these healthy strategies to help us manage stress. So the first three are going to be repression, rationalization, and reframing. So the first one is repressive coping. Repressive coping can be a helpful thing, but it can also not. It really depends. So for example, if you're in a situation where you really don't have much control over it, repressive coping can somewhat help. Like for instance, let's say that you have a friend who is going through something, and there's literally nothing you can do about it, just be there for the friend. Sometimes avoiding the thoughts that the negative thoughts that are associated with that situation can help with coping with the stressor, so that it doesn't start to have a debilitating effect on your life. You are ignoring the thing. You are ignoring the outcome of the thing. You're not letting it have that negative effect on you. So repressive coping can be helpful in some cases, but it's usually only helpful in cases where there's really no way out, where there's genuinely no way out of the situation. So repressive coping can help, but if there is a way out of the situation, repressive coping can become a maladaptive strategy where you're just avoiding the problem and you're not actually doing anything that could be done to solve it, and there actually is something that could be done. So that brings us to the next one. The next one is rational coping. So rational coping is when you are in a situation where it's seemingly insurmountable, but at the same time, there is something that you can do to overcome it. So first things first, you would have to first accept that you have this stress in your life. The next one is that you would seek out what the target issue is with the stressor, and then you would try to figure out what effect it's having on your life, and then try to overcome that stressor. So, for example, let's say that you lost your job out of nowhere. First, accept the fact that you lost a job. Then try to think about what is the target behavior. So do I want to try to reapply for a different job that is similar to this one? Do I want to go into a totally different field? Do I want to try to go to school? Do I want to learn a different trade? Like, what do I want to do to fix this situation, essentially? And then once you do that, you find your solution, then you work toward that solution, and it helps you to overcome that situation, essentially. And then the last one is reframing. So reframing can also be helpful in situations that you feel like you have no control, as well as situations where you do feel like you have control. Reframing is simply just finding a different way to look at the same situation. So finding a more positive way to look at the same situation. So for example, let's say that you lost your job once again. So instead of seeing it as I lost my job, I'm a failure, there's nothing else for me in this world, it might be like, okay, I lost this job, but I'm going to see this as an opportunity to get a better job. Or I lost this job, but I didn't really like the hours at that job anyway. Let me find another job that's going to give me better hours. Or I lost that job, and you know what? I don't even like working a job. I'm going to work for myself now. I'm going to build my TikTok. I'm going to do some. I'm going to become an entrepreneur, etc., etc. So reframing is essentially finding a different way or a creative way to think about a stressor to help you manage it and get through it. Essentially. So other things that you could do that reflect more on like bodily things that can help with stress. So we have a short list here, but this is not an exhaustive list at all. So the first one is meditation. Meditation has been shown to actually really help to reduce stress, reduce blood pressure, reduce all those a lot of those negative effects that can happen in a person's body when they are under chronic stress. So meditation can have a wide range. So some people meditate as a form of religious practice. Other people, they meditate as literally just sitting there and they're just staring into space, or just sitting there in nature and just breathing. So meditation could take many different forms, but overall it's been shown to help a person to reduce their stress levels and then therefore improve their health. Another one is relaxation techniques. So there's something called systematic desensitization, and essentially what it involves is tensing your body and then purposely untensing your body in every area from the top down. So if you feel tense in your neck, loosen in your neck. If you feel tense in your shoulders, loosen your shoulders. If you feel tense in your arms, loosen your arms. Feel tense in your abdomen, loosen your abdomen. And then you basically progressively throughout the body, you are teaching yourself to relax in a stressful situation, and that has also been shown to help. Something that goes hand in hand with this sometimes, and sometimes is used separately, is something called biofeedback, and that is more of like a technology that is associated with helping to reduce stress. What happens is the person is hooked up to a machine with electrodes essentially, and whenever they're experiencing stress and having a negative stressful reaction, they will get it. They will get the computer will send them a message essentially, and then it will remind them to calm down, and then they'll start to calm down. And the idea behind it is that if you keep getting those reminders whenever you're feeling stressed, sooner or later it will become an automatic process, and then you'll start to stress down on your own, or calm down on your own, instead of needing the computer to help you with it. And then last but not least, we have exercise. So aerobic exercise, whether it be just walking, whether it be going to the gym, whether it be lifting weights, doing any kind of exercise can help, and does help to alleviate stress. It helps to improve our heart function. It helps in a number of different ways, and it just helps us overall, basically. And it helps our mind, our body, our soul. It helps in every area of our life, essentially. Um, so now we're going to go into more social factors, or other like psychological social factors that can help with alleviating stress. So social support is seen as like not just one of the many things that will help with stress, but it's seen as like one of the top things. So having social support in anything that you are dealing with, whether it be stress, whether it be sickness, whether it be school, whether it be a job, having somebody in your corner, or perceiving that you have somebody in your corner, automatically is a stress reduction, because you feel like you have somebody who is experiencing it with you. So you feel like you have somebody to lean on, you have somebody to depend on, you have somebody just to vent to. If you feel like you have those things, then that is going to automatically be a stress reduction, or stress reducer for you. Religious or spiritual practice, so things like prayer, things like being involved in a religious community, etc., have been shown to reduce stress, as long as it's a non-toxic, healthy religious group. So we all have heard situations where a person is in a situation that does more harm than good, but if they're in a religious situation where it is actually helping them, then that is going to help reduce their stress as well. Humor is another big one. So laughter literally acts like medicine in our body. So laughing, watching a comedy movie, hanging with friends, doing things that will help to, even if you're just by yourself and you try to find humor in the situation, humor itself can help to reduce stress. And then also avoiding procrastination, and this is specifically if the situation that is stressing you is something that you need to get done that's not being done. So One technique that I use when it comes to avoiding procrastination is if I have a list of things that I don't feel like doing, what I'll do is I'll think of the thing that I least want to do out of the things that I don't want to do. And I don't want to do any of them, but I'll think of the thing that I least want to do out of the list, do that one first, and then the other ones become easier. Another strategy that I've used is literally setting a timer. So like I'll be like, I don't feel like doing anything right now, but if I dedicate 20 minutes to this activity, 20 minutes, that's it. I'm not doing anything else after that 20 minutes. Set my timer on my phone, set it for 20 minutes, start doing the activity. Do it for those 20 minutes. As soon as the timer goes up, I'm done. You would be surprised how much you get done in that 20 minutes. You might even finish the entire activity that you were supposed to be doing. So try those two strategies and then come up with some on your own as well. But those can help break procrastination because procrastination can be very, very debilitating and very stressful. Um, so other things that can happen to help improve our stress. So we're going to talk about personality and stress and then other healthy behaviors. So the first one is optimism. So it's been found when looking at the research for a person who is more optimistic versus a person who's more pessimistic. People who are more optimistic, who have a tendency to see life as like a glass half full versus half empty, they have a tendency to strive for higher goals. They have a tendency to, when they are in a stressful situation, deal with it better. They have a tendency to get out of the stressful situation easier, and they overall seem to have a healthier and more productive life. On the flip side, if a person's pessimistic, that has a tendency to bring them down in all areas. So just like optimism will bring you up, or it will have a tendency to bring you up in all areas, pessimism will have a tendency to bring you down in all areas. So if you find yourself falling into a pattern of pessimism, try to look on the brighter side of the situation. Even if it seems like a situation that's like doesn't have any bright side, try to find the bright in the darkness. And then that will help to alleviate some of the burden and some of the stress, and actually help you get out of the situation easier. Um, that this segues directly into the next thing. So hardiness are people who just seem to like be grounded no matter what they're dealing with. So like not to say that they don't experience stress, and not to say that stress doesn't have any effect on them, but they're just people who are like extremely driven. So hardiness is a personality trait that is seen to help with stress, because it's a person who, it just, no matter what they're dealing with, they feel like they're going to get through with it, basically. And what's been found is that hardy individuals will have a tendency to get through their issues because they believe that they can, and because they're dedicated to the process of getting through their issues. So developing a sense of hardiness can be extremely beneficial trait. Then we have other behaviors. So some of these we already talked about. So eating healthy. We talked about the antioxidants, trying to eat like leafy greens, trying to eat our fruits and vegetables, a well balanced diet. It doesn't mean that you have to, become a vegetarian or something. It just means that if you try to eat a relatively healthy diet on a regular basis, that's going to improve your health overall, and then also improve your stress levels, believe it or not, because a lot of times the what we eat actually can contribute to our health. So a lot of unhealthy foods, they stimulate certain neurotransmitters and certain hormones in our bodies that actually make us anxious and make us depressed and make us stressed out. But when we eat like, the healthier foods, that actually makes our mind clearer. It helps us concentrate more, and it helps us makes us feel better, basically, overall, and helps reduce stress. Um, Safe sexual behaviors. So that can help not just, in a mind way, because you don't feel like you're, gonna get sick or develop an infection or disease, but on the flip side, it actually can help you not to develop those things. So it can help you not just in mind but also in body. And then not engaging in too much excessive drugs and alcohol. Those things can also help with alleviating your stress, and we talked about that before as well. All right. So other things that can help with stress is self-regulation. So developing a sense of self-control. Even in a situation where you don't have perceived control over the situation, if you have control over yourself in the situation, sometimes that can help you with your stress as well. Because you're like, okay, I may not be able to control the situation, but at least I can control how I respond to the situation. And then that will help you to alleviate the stress as well. We already talked about eating. Eating is one of the biggest things. That's why it keeps mentioning it over and over and over in this chapter. But eating in a healthy way, or relatively healthy way, that can once again help with your stress. And then we already talked about sexuality, and we also already talked about drugs and alcohol. So basically, if you don't take anything else from this class, or from this chapter, to help alleviate stress, have a healthy mindset, eat healthy food, engage in healthy exercise patterns, and try to abstain from drugs and alcohol. Those four things will pretty much help you with your stress. It will pretty much help you not just with stress, but with life in general. So hopefully this helped. And this is the end of this chapter. So we won't come back with another one, but we'll be done for the semester after this.